Dear viewer, you are most welcome to this lesson. Social Studies Primary 6 is what we are going to discuss. Today we are going to have a continuation from where we ended last time. We introduced our topic and we looked at a number of things. For example, we looked at the explorers who came to East Africa. And to remind you, we talked of the explorers who were the first to come to East Africa, and those were the Portuguese explorers. We said the Portuguese had come from Portugal. We looked at a lot of things. What made them to get attracted in settling in East Africa, that is, in conquering the East African coast. We also looked at the reasons that made them to achieve or to succeed in conquering the East African coast. We looked at their failures. Those are the factors that made them to lose control over the East African coast. Today, we are having a continuation and we are going to look at other explorers who came to East Africa. Remember, we say most of the explorers who came to East Africa came from that continent that we call Europe. Therefore, we call them the European explorers. We are going to page 7 of our workbooks, Primary 6, in case you have yours. And if you have not yet got it, please make sure you talk to your parents so that they can help you and they avail you with a copy. On that page 7, we are given a table. And what is very interesting is, in Primary 5, we looked at those explorers that entered Uganda. If we were to begin writing some of them, you would find that we talked about John Hanning Speke. John Hanning Speke. And this is the one we said he was the first to enter Uganda. And then we also talked about James Grant. James Grant entered Uganda. And then we also talked about Sir Samuel Baker. Sir Samuel Baker, or the Bakers, and we say this is the one who came with a wife. And then we also talked about Henry Morton Stanley, H.M. Stanley. So these are the ones that we said that they entered Uganda. Therefore, we did not mention other names, and today we are going now to mention them, meaning maybe some of these people did not enter Uganda, but they came to other countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, Rwanda. Of course, all those countries are forming now what we call East Africa. So we are going to look at also the ones who remained in that or in those other countries. We are going to have those names, and when we go to page 8, we are given the first people, and that is John Hanning Speke and Richard Burton. Now, this takes us back to our Primary 5 content, whereby we say that John Hanning Speke came to, he made 2 journeys to East Africa, whereby we said in the first journey, he had moved with Richard Burton, and they traveled from Bagamoyo mainland up to the interior of Tanzania, that is of East Africa, whereby we say they went to Tabora. From Tabora, they visited Ujiji, that is on Lake Tanganyika, and on return back, that is when they returned to Tabora, we said Richard Burton fell sick and was unable to move. Therefore, Speke continued northwards, and when he saw the water body, he assumed it was the source of River Nile, and we say that he went back and told his colleague, that was Burton, who had recovered, and the bad part of it was that Burton could not accept his findings. Therefore, they returned to Europe when they were in that disagreement. And we say because of that disagreement, Speke was sent back to East Africa. And this time he was now given James Grant to move with. And we said they came through the same route from Bagamoyo to Tabora. And we said from Tabora, John Speke, they proceeded up to Karagwe Kingdom, that is in the northern part of Tanzania. And we say it is from that Karagwe Kingdom that's again where James Grant also fell sick and was unable to continue to move. And we had Speke continuing to move, and we say that he then became the first European explorer to cross the borders of Uganda, that is entering Uganda. So that is what we understood in our primary 5 class, and that is already what we are going to understand here. Now, one thing we also need to note is that these explorers could visit Zanzibar, and of course we have now to give the reasons why did they visit Zanzibar. They could visit Zanzibar, one, to get porters, that is to get translators, to get people who are to help them. We can also call those people the guides. And then two, they could go to Zanzibar to get permission from the Sultan, that is from the leader of Zanzibar. So those are the reasons as to why these explorers had to visit Zanzibar. Then the other thing is that we also had these European these explorers using Bagamoyo, which was a longer route to Uganda, instead of maybe crossing from Kenya. And of course, we also understood this, that the people in Kenya had some hostile tribes that were unfriendly, that these people feared. Therefore, they had to go to, and they passed via Bagamoyo, which was having friendly people. So those are the reasons as to why these people did not use that route, that is through Kenya. So we are going to have our sketch map of East Africa, which is going to guide us to understand the entry of these people. We say John Speke came and entered through Bagamoyo. So we are going to have Bagamoyo here. And we say Bagamoyo became the main entrance. We say he moved together with Richard Burton up to Tabora. And from Tabora, they continued up to Ujiji. We are going to have Ujiji here. This is Ujiji, that is near Lake Tanganyika. And we say that when they returned to Tabora, Richard Burton fell sick. That's why in P5 we did not talk about Richard Burton, because in P5 we're looking at the ones that entered Uganda. We just mentioned Burton, but we did not include him in that list. Reason being, he did not enter Uganda. Now we are having Speke continuing, moving northwards, whereby we say he now saw a large mass of water. He saw a large mass of water, and he assumed it was the source of River Nile, whereby he returned to Tabora and he told his colleague, who did not believe in his findings, and we say the two went back when they were in that disagreement. And in the second journey of Speke, we have Speke being accompanied by Grant, and we say they came through the same routes because Speke now had known the journey or the route to take. So they came through Bagamoyo once again to Tabora. From Tabora, we had Karagwe Kingdom here, whereby we say they now moved to Karagwe Kingdom, and from this Karagwe, that is where James Grant fell sick also, and Speke left him to recover, and he crossed the border and he entered Uganda, that is Uganda, and thereby we say he then became the first European explorer to enter Uganda or to come to Uganda. He was later on joined by Grant, and we say Speke moved to the source of River Nile, that is in Jinja, and he discovered, or he became the first European explorer to see the source of River Nile, which was in Jinja. Remember, the source of a river is that point where a river starts flowing. Therefore, we have River Nile starting its flow from this part, that is in Jinja, and we say Speke saw the waterfalls there, and he named them Ripon Falls. Ripon Falls, that was after Lord Ripon, the president of the Royal Geographical Society. Remember, we said in P5 that it was the Royal Geographical Society which sponsored or which paid for the journeys that Speke made together with his friends to East Africa. So that is about John Speke. And we also say that after Speke continued, he moved, and he was now returning with Grant. And we say that when they reached a place in South Sudan, by then this country was all called Sudan. There was a place in the southern part of this Sudan which was called Gondokoro. Gondokoro. This is where we now have Juba. So this is the place where they met another explorer who was coming following the river. That is from where the river pours its water. Of course, a place where a river pours its water is what we call the mouth of a river, or a river mouth. So we shall say that there was an explorer who was following the river right away from where it pours its water, that is from Egypt, coming southwards, following it, and he was hoping to reach where the river started flowing from. And unfortunately, we say they met at Gondokoro, and Speke told this explorer, that is now Sir Samuel Baker. Speke told him about his findings. So he told him that I have already discovered the source of River Nile. There is a lake in Uganda called, it was called Nalupale, but I have now named it Victoria. Remember we said it's Speke who named this lake Victoria. That is after Queen Victoria of England by that time. We have Sir Samuel Baker also continuing. Instead of going to the source as he hoped, he had now to cross to the western part of Uganda, whereby he went to Bunyoro Kingdom, that is, which was under the leadership of Omukama Kamurazi, that is the father of Omukama Kabalega. So he visited Bunyoro Kingdom, and he saw the lake, which was called Lake Muitanzije, and named it Albert. That was now the husband of the queen by that time. So we need to know that we have the Europeans naming the physical features of Uganda, or giving them the names of their prominent people in Europe. And after this, we said Sir Samuel Baker went back to Europe. That is about Sir Samuel Baker. Next on our page, that is already covered on page 9, we have already talked about Sir Samuel Baker. We are now going to Dr. David Livingstone. That is on page 10. But before we talk about Dr. David Livingstone, we wanted to first talk about Henry Morton Stanley. We say that when Speke went back to Europe, of course he presented his findings, and he told that Paul sent him that he had found the source of River Nile, that is in Lake Victoria, which means there was need for the British, there was need for these people to prove the findings of John Speke. Therefore, they sent Henry Morton Stanley. We are going to look at Henry Morton Stanley making 3 journeys to East Africa. But for this very particular one, we are looking at now the time whereby he was sent to discover, to prove whether the findings of John Speke were true or not. That is the journey we have, that is in 1874. We have him making 3 journeys. The first one we are saying he came to look for Dr. David Livingstone, and then that is in 1871. We have another one in 1874. That is when he was sent to discover, to prove the findings on of John Speke. Now here we are going to have Henry Morton Stanley coming, entered the interior of East Africa through the same route, that is through Bagamoyo, and we say that they could use Bagamoyo because it had friendly people. Imagine this would be the shorter route to the lake, but they had to go for a longer route, and we have already given the reason. This area here had hostile people, It had the hostile tribes or the unfriendly tribes that could who are not welcoming any other foreigners. Those are the Maasai and the Nandi in Kenya. So we are having Stanley also coming, and there is something which I want us to understand here. We are going to show the journey of Stanley, and we are having Stanley moving from Bagamoyo to Tabora. From Tabora, he continued and he came to Uganda. And we are going to say that when Stanley came to Uganda, he moved around the lake. This is what we call circumnavigating. He sailed around the lake. Therefore, we are going to have two questions here. The first question is, why was Henry Morton Stanley sent to Uganda? And we have said that was in 1874. The reason was to prove the findings of John Speke. Then another question is, why did he have to circumnavigate? Why did he sail around Lake Victoria? Now, he sailed around Lake Victoria to draw its map, to draw the map of Lake Victoria. That is why he circumnavigated, to draw the map of Lake Victoria. I hope you have got the difference between the two questions. The first one is, why was he sent? That one is simple. We simply say he was sent to prove the findings of John Speke. To prove the findings. Meaning to confirm whether what John Speke was true or not. To prove the findings of John Speke. And then the other next question we are saying, why then did he circumnavigate? Why did he sail around the lake? And we have said he sailed around the lake in order to draw the map of that lake, such that he could present even the map, saying that it's true, even the map is here, which I captured for that lake. So that is what we need to understand in these questions. Therefore, after Stanley moving around or sailing around the lake, we have him coming back, and we say that he then met the Kabaka of Buganda, who then requested him to write a letter inviting the missionaries to come to Buganda. That will now take us back to our primary 5 work, leading us now to the missionaries coming. So we say that the missionaries were invited by the Kabaka of Buganda, that is Kabaka Mutesa I, and he requested Stanley to write a letter on his behalf, which was sent to the Queen of England, and the missionaries got the information, thereby they came to Uganda, that is to Buganda in particular. So that is about Henry Morton Stanley. And then we have him making the last journey, or the third journey, that is in 1888, whereby we say that he now came to rescue Emil Pasha from the Equatoria province. Remember, we say that the Equatoria province was the area which was made up of the northern part of Uganda and the southern part of Sudan. That is the area, this was the place that we called Equatoria province. That is P5 work that we talked about. In case you have forgotten, then you need also to keep on revising your notes of primary 5. So we are going back to Dr. David Livingstone. That is on page 10, whereby we say, as we can hear the name, Dr. David Livingstone. We have Dr. David Livingstone. Now, this was a person who was, we can say he was 3 in 1. One, he was a doctor, as we have already said. He was a doctor. That is number 1. Number 2, he was a missionary. He was a missionary. At the same time, he was an explorer. So So if a question is asking us, apart from being a missionary, what else was the work of Dr. David Livingstone? We have understood he was a doctor, he was as well as a missionary and an explorer, meaning he could explore, he could discover some other places, or he could get new information about some places. Of course, that's how we define an explorer. He could also preach the word of God to the people, or in those areas where he was or where he visited, and that is what he called spreading Christianity, meaning he was a missionary at that time. And then at the same time, he could treat people from these diseases like malaria, sleeping sickness, and so on, which means he was a doctor at the same time. And he is that explorer who had much love for Africa. That's why you'll find that even when he was sent to rescue, even when Henry Morton Stanley was sent to get him or to take him back, he refused, and he remained in Africa because of the much love he had in Africa. And he spent most of his time in Africa. So we are saying that this is, he made journeys of exploration in southern and central Africa. He explored River Rovuma, Lake Malawi, and Tanganyika. We have River Rovuma here. This is the border between Tanzania and Mozambique. This is the country we call Mozambique. So we are having him exploring River Rovuma. We have Lake Malawi here, and then we have also Lake Tanganyika here. So those are his explorations, and we are saying he helped to stop slave trade in the areas where he was, that is by preaching against the evils of slave trade. And he had met Henry Morton Stanley, we said, at Ujiji, that is in 1871, and we say that he remained in Africa till he died in 1873, and his body was carried by his faithful servant, that is Susi and Chuma, to the East African coast, where it was then transported or delivered to and buried in the Westminster Abbey, that is in Britain. So that is about Dr. David Livingstone. And then we now go to page 11, which gives us Joseph Thomson. Joseph Thomson. Joseph. This is the spelling for Thomson. We are going to correct the one we have in our workbooks. Joseph Thomson. This is the person. This is the explorer who managed to cross the Maasai land. You will find that, like we say, that all other people had feared to cross the Maasai. But remember, they were now looking for the shorter route. They were like, couldn't there be any other route apart from Bagamoyo, which is very long? So we have this Joseph Thomson trying his best to cross via the Maasai land, and he came to the eastern part of Uganda, whereby we say he became the first European explorer to discover or to see Mountain Elgon. That is about Joseph Thomson. Then the other name we have is Ludwig Krapf. We are going to make there is one letter missing on that name. Ludwig Krapf also has a name, Johann Ludwig Krapf. That is the name that we are having for that gentleman, Johann Ludwig Krapf. I want you to check in your book, Ludwig, letter L is missing and it begins with U. It was the printing error. So kindly put that L before the U so that it becomes Ludwig Krapf. So we are saying Ludwig Krapf was also both an explorer as well as a missionary. And we say that he was sent by the Church Missionary Society, and he also translated the Bible into Kiswahili, and he wrote also a dictionary from that is English to Kiswahili, which was meant to help to interpret or to make people understand the gospel. He was also the first to come to he also built what we call Rabbi Impia, that is the first mission. He established the first mission in East Africa, that is the mission station for praying, that is at Rabbi Impia. Then we go to page 12, which gives us Johannes Rebman. Johannes Rebman. That is double N. Johannes Rebman. So we are having Johannes Rebman. We are saying he was also a missionary, just like Ludwig Kraft. He was also a missionary as well as an explorer who helped also in spreading Christianity, and he was the first European explorer to see Mountain Kilimanjaro, that is in Tanzania, that is in 1847. Then we have Jacob Ehrhardt, that we are saying he later on joined Kraft and Rebman, and we are saying this is the person who tried to draw the sketch map of East Africa that we have today. That is about Jacob Ehrhardt. And we have Count Teleki, that we are saying this was a Hungarian who came from Hungary, and he was the first to discover that is lake Turkana. So that is about those explorers. The other ones we have are Dr. Fisher, we have Oscar, we have Count Adolf, and then Richard Kant. All these are other explorers that visited East Africa. We have the map of East Africa summarized on page 14, which you will be able to tell. You will find that that map is having what we have explained here. We have the journeys of those, more so the ones that entered Uganda. We have John Speak and Richard Burton, and then we have also John Speak, the same route with James Grant. And they now entered, Speak continued, and he met Sir Samuel Becker, who was coming from the mouth of River Nile. And when he was told about the findings, he now crossed to western Uganda, and he went to Bunyoro. He saw the lake Mutanzije, by then named it Albert, and he went back, as we already discussed. And then we have also Henry Morton Stanley coming through the same route, and him circumnavigating. That is what we have understood as sailing around the lake. So that is what happened what happened in East Africa during the exploration. We are going to look at the problems that these explorers met, that they faced on their way to East Africa, or to Africa as a whole. Which problems did they meet when they were in East Africa? Of course, the first problem, we should always know that these people did not know the languages which were spoken in East Africa. Therefore, they had that difficulty in communication. This is what we address as language barrier. So that is our first problem that we should put in our minds, language barrier. Problems faced by the explorers. While in East Africa. So we have said the first problem is these people met a problem of language barrier, that is difficulty in communication, meaning they could not understand what the locals could speak, or they were not understanding the local languages which were spoken by the natives, by the local people in East Africa. Problem number two is these people had also a problem of hostile tribes. Remember, we say that they had feared to pass via Kenya, meaning they could fear those hostile communities. We can address it as hostile tribes. And then also there were hostile, hostile or fierce wild animals that could eat up some of them. So we can have that as another problem. We can call it attacks from wild animals, attacks from wild animals, and then it became also difficult for these people traveling for long distances on foot. So that became also another problem, traveling for long distance or covering long distances. Let's make it covering long distances. Long distances on foot. That is footing for a long distance. Then sometimes they could get interfered with the physical features when they are trying to move, like they are going to an area, then they get maybe a physical feature, maybe a mountain is in an area, a lake, and you could find such things could make them again to go on getting other ways of bypassing that area, and of course it became a problem. That is difficulty in crossing physical features. You can call it difficulty in crossing some physical features. Difficulty in crossing some physical features. This was not alone. These people also lacked supply. Lack of supplies, meaning they lacked items to use like food as they were traveling. So it also became another problem. And then crossing thick forests. Remember, by that time we did not have clear roads like the way we have today. So you could find people were passing through forests, thick forests. So it became a problem crossing through thick forests. And this brought the problem of them being eaten up by some of these animals or being attacked by these animals. So for that we go to page 15, which gives us the effects or the results or the outcomes of the coming of these explorers to East Africa. What happened because of their coming? Of course, we have the effects grouped into two. We have those that were good, and then we shall be having those that were bad. Their coming was bad. So we are going to have them. One says that it made East Africa to be known to the rest of the outside world. That was good, because East Africa to be known by the rest of the world countries. And then it also paved the way for the coming of the missionaries to Uganda, who then taught Ugandans how to read and write. That was good. Remember, we said the coming of these missionaries, we had, the Kabaka of Buganda, that is Kabaka Mutesa I, inviting, and then we had the explorer himself who contributed in writing the letter which invited them. So we shall, for that case, say that the coming of the missionaries led the coming of missionaries. That was Henry Morton Stanley. And then also, the reports that these people made were submitted to their home countries, which made them develop interest in colonizing. That's why in primary 5, we now talked about now the colonialists coming to rule Uganda. We shall also have the same thing in the whole of East Africa. The reports they made are the ones that attracted the colonialists to come and rule Uganda or East Africa. And of course, this became now a negative effect. As the other ones came to rule, you will find that Ugandans, Kenyans, Tanzanians, and any other East African country had to lose its independence to these colonialists. That is the negative part of it. And then also they provided information which helped to avoid slave trade. Remember, when these people came, they saw the way the Arabs were treating people. Remember, we said that the Arabs were the first to come to East Africa. That is before the coming of these explorers. So the Arabs were already in East Africa, and they were already subjecting people to that evil act of slave trade. So when they came, like we talked about missionaries, explorers, like Dr. David Livingstone, that we said you also say missionary. We find such people who are preaching against slave trade, and of course it helped the Africans to be freed from that act. So that was also the good part of the coming of these missionaries to these explorers to East Africa. Though some of them came as 2 or 3 in one. One is an explorer, at the same time is a missionary. One is an explorer, at the same time is a doctor. So all that we need to understand it. That will take us to the exercise which we have running from page 15. We have the exercise running from page 15 up to page 18. So you make sure you bend down and you get these questions written properly and using a good handwriting. Don't write without seriousness. Concentrate such that you produce neat work, because your book is going to be given to your teacher to mark. It will not be good for a teacher to find work which is like for a person who was not ready to write. So we are going to another group of foreigners that came to East Africa, and we are now going to look at the group that came as a result of these explorers. Now, here we talked about Henry Morton Stanley contributing or playing a role in the writing of the letter. And we said in primary 5 that the letter was given and was taken to Britain. It was given to Lieutenant de Bellefonds, remember? And we said de Bellefonds was murdered in South Sudan, that is in Sudan by that time. And we said the letter was found in his boots, which was then delivered and was published on the Daily Telegraph. And when they read the letter, they now accepted to come. Those are the people now we are going to be looking at as missionaries. So we are going to have missionaries, this time not only in Uganda, but we are going to look at even the other ones who came to other parts or other countries in East Africa. That's why we are having our heading as missionaries in East Africa. This is going to be our third group of foreigners. The first one was the one of traders. That's why we talked about the Arabs mainly. Second one, we have talked about the explorers. We are done. We are moving to the missionaries. Now, in simple ways, we are going to begin by defining a missionary. Who is a missionary? And we shall say a missionary is a person who goes out of his or her homeland to another purposely to spread the word of God. A missionary is a person who goes out of his or her home country that is to another to spread his or her religion. That is how we can define a person we call a missionary. A person who goes out of his or her religion, his or her home country, to another to spread his or her religion. This is what we can call the word of God, which means we need to note that we can have Christian missionaries, we can have Islamic missionaries. It's also right for us to talk about that. Of course, now we shall be looking at the ones who move from from their home countries to another to spread Islam as a religion. They also become missionaries, or that we shall now call them the Islamic missionaries. But this very particular case, we are going to be looking at those Christian missionaries who came from Europe. And we are saying the coming of the missionaries was as a result of the letter which was written inviting them to come to Buganda, that is in Uganda as a whole. We have the missionaries coming in 2 groups. Missionaries came in 2 groups that we talked about in P5. groups of missionaries that came to East Africa. We say the missionaries came in two. Which was the first group? We say there was the group of the Anglicans that we can call the Anglican missionaries. Anglican missionaries. These are the ones some people write as the Protestants, better we say Anglicans. And then after that, we shall also be looking at what we call the Roman Catholic missionaries. That we can also call the Roman Catholics. That is what we are having. These are the two groups of missionaries that came to East Africa. In East Africa mainly, we need to note that we have these groups, these people sent, like the Anglican missionaries, we say they were sent by the Church Missionary Society, and then for the Roman Catholics, we say this was the group of the Roman Catholic Society. That is, they were sent by the Roman Catholic Society, and we say it was the group of the White Fathers. We talked about that. They were sent. They were the first. That is, for the Anglican missionaries, we are saying they were the first to come to East Africa, and they were sent by different societies, and mainly for us in Uganda, we say they were sent by the Church Missionary Society. Then we also have other societies like the London Missionary Society, and then the Free Church of Scotland. We have the British Church Missionary Society and Church of Scotland Mission. We have the African Inland Mission and the Lutherans. We are going to the Church Missionary Society, which we say it sent the first Christian missionaries. That is to say, we have Ludwig Kraft, that is the one we call Johann Ludwig Kraft, and we said he was the first European missionary to come, and later on he was joined by Johannes Rebmann and Jacob Erhard, as we talked about on the side of the explorers. We have Ludwig Kraft building the first mission station that is in East Africa, and that is of course a mission station that is for conducting prayers or for praying. And we also say that he translated the Bible into Kiswahili, which was to help the people of East Africa to understand what was contained in the Bible, or to understand the Word of God easily. So that is about Ludwig Kraft. He was later on joined by Rebmann, and we are saying that they both worked together in that act of spreading Christianity, that is in East Africa. And later on, Jacob Erhard also joined. We are going to page 20, which gives us the Roman Catholics, who are also sent by different societies. We have the White Fathers from France, then we have the Mill Hill Fathers, we have the Veroma Fathers, the Holy Ghost Fathers, and the Methodist Fathers. We are going to look at the missionary work in Uganda in particular. That is where we find, that's what we have on our page 21. The missionary work in Uganda. And we say that the missionaries coming to Uganda came as a result of Kabaka Mutesa I, who requested Stanley to write the letter inviting the missionaries to Buganda. Now, we are going to look at two things here. One, why did the Kabaka invite missionaries? And then we shall also look at why did the missionaries come? There is something which is very interesting that we need to understand here. We have reasons why Kabaka Mutesa I. Reasons as to why Kabaka Mutesa I invited missionaries to his kingdom. That is the first thing that we are going to be understanding. Then, after us understanding the reasons as to why the Kabaka invited missionaries, we shall also be able to understand or to write reasons why missionaries came to Uganda. Of course, there is what we need to note here. Reasons why missionaries came to Uganda. So we are going to discuss these things. Now, the Kabaka of Uganda had his reasons for inviting missionaries. Number one, we say the king wanted the missionaries to teach his people how to read and write. To teach his people, he wanted missionaries to teach his people how to read and write. How to read and write. That is reason number one. Reason number two, since these missionaries were from powerful countries, the king also thought that they would come and would offer him protection. That is, we can call it to protect him, or we simply say for protection. Meaning, he hoped to get some gifts. That is another one. He hoped to have gifts from them, since they were from powerful countries or rich countries. Gifts from them. So these are the things, these are the reasons that made the king want the missionaries to come to his kingdom. However, we are going to look at the reasons as to why the missionaries came to Uganda. And we are having this on page 23. Missionaries came mainly, that is what I want you to get, mainly to spread Christianity. There is something we need to understand here. Why did the king invite them? The king wanted mainly, he wanted the missionaries to teach his people how to read and write. But again, we are also having the missionaries coming mainly with the aim of spreading Christianity. They said, much as we are going to teach their people, but the major reason we are going there is to spread Christianity. That is the major reason for the coming of missionaries to East Africa. Then other reasons come in, like stopping slave trade, because of the reports that the explorers had written about slavery or slave trade in East Africa. So they came also with the purpose of stopping slave trade. Then we have also now those other reasons of teaching people, to teach people how to read and write. That is what we call the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetics. Those are the 3 R's that we have. And then they also wanted to introduce their Western education. That is what we call formal education, to teach their Western education. We can term this introduce. Missionaries wanted to introduce Western education. That is to East Africa. And then also we have on our page that the missionaries wanted to introduce what we call legitimate trade, that was now to replace slave trade. Now we are going to look at the effects of the coming of these missionaries. And these effects, we are going to group them still in 2. Like I've always told you, when we talk of effects, we are looking at the outcomes, what happened, and always these things come in 2 ways. There are those that become good, and there are those that become bad. Those ones which are good are the ones we call positive effects. The ones which are bad are the ones we call negative effects. We are beginning with the positive effects for the coming of the missionaries to East Africa. The first one tells us that these missionaries have spread Christianity, which was good. which helped after they won the souls of humans in East Africa. 2, they built churches. They built hospitals. For example, in P5, P4, we learned about Dr. Albert Cook. We said he built the first hospital in Uganda, and that is Mengo Hospital. So that was a good effect. That was an advantage to a country. We also have missionaries building schools. We have them building roads, that is constructing roads. Of course, the roads were now used by every other person, not only them. And today we are using these roads still. Missionaries introduced some crops. For example, we talked about Reverend Kenneth Bora in primary 5, whereby we say Kenneth Bora introduced the first growing cotton seeds to Uganda. So that is what we are talking about here. And then they also taught people how to read and write. And of course, people now learned how to read and write. They also taught practical skills, like we talked of Alexander McKay, that is in P5, whereby we said he was a carpenter who could teach people practical skills, carpentry. And of course, we also understood that he introduced the first printing press, which was used to print prayer books, Bibles, hymn books, and so on, which were used to praise God. We have missionaries building schools. We have already talked about Rabbi Mpia, that is in Kenya, and also setting up missions for praising God. Then we cross the negative effects for the coming of the missionaries to East Africa. The negative effects, the first one tells us that they now led to colonization of African countries. That is, when they came, they paved the way for the coming of colonialists who then came and ruled Africa. And of course, this made the African countries to lose their independence. That is the first negative effect. Second negative effect, when in primary 5 we talked about the religious wars which were in Uganda, whereby we had those converts who had changed or who had got converted to Christianity in different ways. Remember, we said the missionaries came in 2 groups. There were the Anglican missionaries, then we had the Roman Catholics. And we said in primary 5 that there was a war which was staged between the Anglican missionaries and the Catholic missionaries. So as a result of such things being created by the missionaries, it became negative. It was not good, because this now made people to die. They also brought hatred among people. You could find, if you are relatives, maybe you are brothers, you are from the same family, but now your fellow brother has joined the other side of the Anglicans. You could find that then now you, who is on the side of the Catholics, you could not want to be with that person. That was very bad. That's what we call causing separation and disunity among people in East Africa, which was very bad. And also, we talked about the Uganda matters, that we say that these are the people who accepted to be killed for their faith. And of course, the faith was Christianity, whereby we say that when the missionaries came, they now regarded what was in Uganda as evil, the practices. And it made the king who had invited them to lose interest, to lose, he had lost love for them. And we say that by the time his son now came to power, that was Kabaka Mwanga, he had now become totally parallel. He had hated them because his father had invited them to come and teach their people. Instead, they came and they were preaching against the traditions in Uganda. So this made him to caution those people, those converts who had changed into Christianity, to denounce, of which we say they did not accept. Instead, they were now ready to die for that religion, and it made to the killing of those people that we call the Uganda martyrs. So it is still the coming of missionaries that led to the death of these people we call the Uganda martyrs. As we talked about them, we may not be able to go back to that. Missionaries also undermine the cultures of Ugandans, not only Ugandans, but the whole of East Africa. They undermine. An example is already what you have talked about in Uganda. They considered what was in Uganda as evil, those practices. So that was a sign of undermining people who are in Uganda and East Africa as a whole. We are now going to the last heading on that page 23, which gives us the problems that these missionaries faced. Now, these missionaries, the problems they faced are not different from those that the explorers faced. For example, we are going to talk about the same. We say the explorers had a difficulty, they had a challenge in understanding the languages spoken by the locals. The same applies here. Even these missionaries were from those very foreign countries, so they didn't know the languages which were spoken in East Africa, and as a result, it caused what we call language barrier. So it still comes here. They also faced a problem of notorious tribes. Those are hostile tribes that were not friendly. That one also comes in. They also met a problem of animal attacks, also comes in. They also had difficulty in crossing physical features, also comes in. A problem in crossing thick forests also comes in as another problem. So we shall have the same things. And then they also met some hatred or some resistance from cruel leaders, like we have already talked about Kabaka Mwanga of Uganda, who turned against them. Then also we talk about tropical diseases. Some of these people suffered from these tropical diseases and they lost their lives. That is also another challenge or another problem that they faced, including traveling for long distances on foot, as we talked about still on the side of the explorers. So we need to note that these problems cut across, because even these ones were Europeans like the other ones. So for now, we are going to end our lesson there, and I thank you so much for your active attention and your participation. May God continue blessing you and giving you more energy to keep on accessing our lessons and keep on learning right from your comfort. See you another time.